morning, everybody. So, welcome to Hope Clinic. I remain your amazing friend, Happiness. And just as I always tell you that the reason why I call myself your amazing friend is because I care so much about you. And this is the reason why I'm shooting this video. So, last week, someone raised a question for us, and which was the center for our discussion last week. And just as I said last week that we were not done with the question because we are still going to continue on that question, or we are still going to continue on sexual addiction considering that question that was raised for us last week, because the question is to be addressed properly. So before I continue on what I want to talk about today, or let me just quickly tell us the topic or what we want to talk about today. Okay, I want to talk about how to break free from sexual addiction. So before we talk about that, it's very important for me to read the question again. So I'm going to do that now. So I just want you to sit back and pay attention as I read the question again. Okay, so I am a girl and I am addicted to stimulate my clitoris. I wanted to give up this habit, but I can't. How much days it takes for my body to stop craving for it? Also, I am planning rather to go on a tour, but my urges are not controllable. Should I go? So that was the question, and the question was the reason for our discussion last week, which we talked about the causes of addiction last week. And one of the things that we talked about last week concerning the causes of addiction was lack of proper education. I'm not here to repeat what I've said last week. Please, if you need to know about what we've said last week, please, you can go back to the previous videos and check. And at the same time, Hope Clinic is now on YouTube, as you all know. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Happiness Omolade. And at the same time, follow my page on Facebook, like this video, and most importantly, share, because somebody needs this video you might not know. Alright, so as I was saying, I said that what I want to talk about today is how to break free from sexual addiction, considering the question I just read for us. So before I go into what we have, of course, I have 6 points and also have one bonus point for us. So before I go into that, I want to say that addiction is an infirmity that takes away your willpower as a person. Please, you need to understand that. God has given every human being a will, the power to choose, the power to make your choices. But one of the things that addiction has come to do for you is to take away your willpower as a person. So you need to understand that. So how then can you break free from this addiction, from this infirmity that chooses to take away your willpower? The first thing that you need to do is that you need to recognize and accept that you are addicted. You know, it's so interesting to know that there are so many persons that they are ignorant of what is happening to them. They are ignorant of their present situation. There are so many persons walking in the streets that they are addicted, but they refuse to acknowledge the fact that they are addicted. Or they don't even know that they are addicted. Let me put it that way. Or probably just refuse to acknowledge the fact that they are addicted. So for you to be able to break out of sexual addiction, you need to recognize that you are addicted to sex. Yes, let's be factual. You need to recognize that. And the second thing that you need to be aware of is that you need to understand and being aware of the consequence. You know, one of the things that I've understood about addiction, as I said last week when I was concluding the last week video, was that addiction at first looks pleasurable. But the truth of the matter is the end point is destruction. So that's one of the things about addiction, or that's one of the things about lust or perversion. It introduces itself as something that is pleasurable, but at the same time, the end point is destruction. So as a person, you need to understand that it has consequence. And for every destructive act, there is a pleasure at first. So you need to understand that, and you need to understand that addiction has a consequence, because if you don't know that, there is no how you will want to work towards breaking forth of sexual addiction. And the second thing that I want to talk about concerning how to break forth of sexual addiction is knowing that you need a savior, knowing that you need somebody to help you. Of course, You need to understand that, because if you don't understand that you need a savior, if you don't understand that you need somebody to help you, there's no how you can break forth of this. And the only help that we have is God. The only help that we have, the only person that can help us is God. You need to come to the feet of Christ. You need to come to the feet of Christ and understanding that He is enough to help you. You know, that reminds me of a particular woman in the Bible, Mary Magdalene. She was a prostitute, but she realized that she needed help from Jesus Christ. So she spent herself by breaking an expensive bottle of oil at the feet of Jesus Christ for help. And afterwards, we would see what happened. It was useful for the gospel of Christ, actually. So you need to understand that you need a savior. You need to understand that you need somebody to help you. You need help for you to break forth of sexual addiction. Now, the fourth point is that discipline. That's very, very important. You need to understand that you are in charge of your body. You need to understand that you are in charge of yourself. Even if your hand is feeling like, stimulating clitoris, or even if your clitoris is feeling like I want to be stimulated, or even if your sexual organ is feeling like I just want to be stimulated, you need to understand that you are in charge of that body. You are the governor of your body, and it is what you decide that your body does. So you need to understand that. And at the same time, what I would love to say concerning discipline is that you need to understand that you are restricted, or you need to understand restrictions. You need to be watchful of what you expose yourself to. You need to be watchful of where you go. You need to be watchful of what you see, what you listen to, and all like that. You need to be in charge of your body. You need to be determined, and you need to be disciplined. Now, the fifth one, or the fifth way out of sexual addiction that I want to address for you is sound mind. Sound mind. And how can you have a sound mind as a person? Is number one thing is that you really need to be focused on good content. Focus your mind on good content. And at the same time, you need to understand the power of imagination. Yes, you need to engage your thoughts. You need to engage your imaginations. You need to feed your thoughts. The Bible says that as a man think in his heart, so he is. So it is what you think in your heart. It is what you imagine that you are. So you really need to understand that your imagination is very powerful. So you think what is right in your heart, and you focus your thoughts on what is right, on good content. And lastly, before I move away from sound mind, is that I want to quickly confirm something from you from the book of Philippians chapter 4 verse 7, and I'm going to be reading it for you right away. It says that, and the peace of God which passeth all understanding shall keep your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. So it is the peace of the Lord that passeth all understanding that will keep your minds, that will keep your hearts. And at the same time, you need to be conscious of engaging your heart with pure content. Engaging your heart with whatsoever that is lovely, with whatsoever that is pure, and with whatsoever that is of good report, and whatsoever that is of good virtue as a person, to break forth of sexual addiction. Okay, now the sixth one that I want to talk about. Okay, before I talk about the sixth one, I want to move further on how to have a sound mind as a person is having faith, believing that this thing is controllable, believing that you can break forth of this. Because the truth of the matter is, if you believe that you can be free from this addiction, then obviously you will be free. So it's very important for you to have that in your mind, sound mind. You need to believe, have faith that it is controllable, have faith that you can break forth of sexual addiction. And lastly, how can you have a sound mind? Is by confessing positive words, positive confession. I've gotten to understand that there's a way that the brain reacts to vocal utterance. There's a way the brain reacts to words. There's a way words interrupt the brain from doing the usual things. So when you confess positive words, when you confess positive things daily to yourself, to your consciousness, so there's a way it redirects your mind, and there's a way it gives you sound mind, and there's a way it helps you to break forth from sexual addiction. And the sixth one is redirecting your energy to new activities. There are a lot of activities outside there that you can redirect your energy to, probably by reading good books, listening to good music, dancing to good music, no, probably cooking, probably, exercise, sports. There are several good activities that you can re-strategize or you can redirect your energy towards that will distract you from that urge as a person. So, lastly, isolation might be necessary. Of course, I am not saying that it might be compulsory because it might not be for every person. But there are some cases that isolation might be necessary. Reason being that that particular environment might not be helpful for your breaking forth out of sexual addiction. So you might need to isolate yourself from that present environment. So isolation might be necessary as one of the way for breaking forth of sexual addiction. I think it's enough for us to call it a day today. So, but before I go, let me conclude. And I'm going to conclude by saying that you need to remember that every destructive act, at first come as a pleasurable thing. In fact, it begins with pleasure. But you need to understand that nothing is going to change until you refuse to enjoy the pleasure that comes from it first. So until you refuse the pleasure that comes from addiction first, nothing is going to change. Of course, it will look pleasurable, but it is destruction. So you really need to refuse that pleasure first. And of course, welcome to your journey to deliverance. All right. So this will be the end of opening for today. So we'll meet next week. Bye.